I am unashamed. What about you?
Welcome back to Unashamed. We're back in our boxes. I'm in the southern lair. You can take a drink, Zach, with our
take a drink.
New drinking game. Yeah, from our
did y'all like that from the last?
I thought that was really good. Was it Lance?
Lance, yeah.
Is that right?
From our last
I
podcast.
sent him an Instagram. I think he's off of Instagram right now, so because he didn't respond to me. But I said, hey, you need to check out whatever that one aired. So we'll see when he gets back on.
The Southern Lair was one of his buzzword, one of his drinking words.
Zach, what you got to remember is not everybody stops what they're doing when you send them a message.
Well,
that was a joke. I was just creating some tension before we begin.
Oh, the tension's already there, Jay. It's good tension, though. It's healthy tension.
Zach is a big boss. He's got a lot of people that work for him. He's used to people just snapping to attention.
Oh, gosh. No, I'm not used to that. I'm used to people just, yeah. Well,
Go ahead, Zach.
I'm a different kind of boss. You know, when Willie showed up on the podcast last time, one of the comments said, something like, we see how Zach cowers down like a little baby when the real boss shows up.
No, that was a good comment. I would have, what did they call that? Thumbs up it or whatever?
You'd have gave that a thumbs up.
I'd have given that a thumbs up. Or, ha ha. That's good entertainment there.
That's good TV right there. I don't care who you are.
And it is funny because the way Willie is, that's one of the things people ask me, they ask about everybody kind of like behind the scenes on the show. And I'm like, Willie had to be the guy on the show to like try to crack the whip, get everybody to work, all this stuff. But he's the biggest prankster of us all. And you don't get to see that much on the old Little Duck show, Jase, but he's the one that has that personality more than all of us, so he just kind of had to roll to fulfill.
Yeah. Not that his pranks are any fun. It's usually at the detriment of whoever the prank is on. That's why I'm like, some pranks are not funny. They're disturbing. And most of his are.
Yeah. I don't know the statute of limitations on this, but when he was running Camp Chioka, there was a certain individual named Cliff that was always hanging around Willie because Willie always had an entourage, and they got in a prank war. And I can't remember what Cliff did, but whatever it was, Willie. Here's the problem with pranking Willie. On the other, whatever your thing is, he's gonna times it by 10. And so he chased.
He knows no limits. He knows no limits.
I still think about this. We talk about this probably twice a year at my house. And Willie chases Cliff down. He tackles him. And I don't know why he had this on him, but he had a little canister of Cheese Whiz. Willie had a can of Cheese Whiz on him. And he took that Cheese Whiz and he put it in Cliff's ear. And he started pouring Cheese Whiz all in his ear.
That's dangerous.
That's what I said.
That's what I mean. Now, the only problem with that story is you're like wondering why Willie had a can of cheese on him.
Yeah.
That's just standard operating procedure.
He never left home without
Why would he not have a can of cheese?
Yeah, he bypasses the crackers. And he cocks his mouth sideways and just goes
straight in.
I've seen him do it many times.
It's Cheese Whiz, man.
So you might like your burgers, Zach. Spray some Cheese Whiz on it.
Well, Jase and Willie are the only two people I've ever seen that literally had a fight. I mean, a serious fist fight over food, over who got to use the.
I would call it a wrestling match. There really wasn't punches thrown. It was more of a grappling. I've told this story before on the podcast, so if you go deep into the archives, you'll find it. But no, it wasn't about the food. It was about the timing, who's on first, what's on second. I had a pizza. Willie had a pizza that he wanted to warm up, frozen pizza. I didn't eat that kind of junk back then. But I was making some toast. I was in the process. Well, toast takes 1 minute on broil. Yeah,
because you just broil it, yeah.
But I was making it when he came in, and I had the oven on broil. So I'd already, to me, started the process. Well, he grabs a pizza, turns the oven on 400, and sticks his pizza in there. I said, nope. I was here first. This will take 1 minute. Then you. So when I went to take his pizza out, he shoved me. And 2 minutes
It was on.
2 minutes later, old Jase had the upper hand after I managed to lift him and then drop him on a 5-gallon bucket of flour, which exploded. And
it was a belly to back
souffle.
Souffle.
Oh yeah, it was well done. And of course, no parents are there. We were grown men. I mean, I was
there. I watched
19 years old, and he was 17. Well,
So you were following Jesus at this point.
no, we got rebuked immediately. Don Curley Foster, who was a family friend that Phil had brought to the Lord, he said, well, that was a fine way for two godly men to act, which he was being sarcastic. So then that kind of convicted me, because I thought, ooh, he's right, but I don't like it. And then Willie took off, got the keys to the only car we had, took off, and he's like, where's he going? I said, oh, he'll be back in a minute. He's a runner.
He's a runner.
He's a runner.
That's what he did when Dad slapped him in the face when he gave Grant a can of Coke, but it didn't have Coke in it. It had Copenhagen spit. And Grant took a swig of it. Grant was about 3.
Speaking of pranks.
Yeah, Grant was about 3. Willie was about 15. And
Grant's never been the same.
But see, it's great. And he probably never dipped snuff. And just like then, Willie has never shoved me again. So we have.
But when Dad slapped him, you know what he did? He took off running.
He's a runner.
He's a runner.
Yeah.
But what's funny about it, if you hear Willie tell that story, Willie cast himself as a 4-year-old child, and my dad, he cast as a morbidly obese giant,
abusive uncle.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. The way when Willie tells the story, it's pretty funny because it's not what happened, but it's very funny. It's very.
He
funny.
kind of tells the story about the fight. That's basically what happened. I think it took him 20 years to say, Jase is more scrappy than he looked. I think he was surprised but we were into wrestling a lot, so I was like, if I ever can get this joker and use his weight against him. So with everything I had, I lifted the beast, and then I just collapsed backwards. I was trying to get him to hit the table, but during the jostling, he just came down on that can of flour, which actually, from a movie-making standpoint, just had an incredible effect because when the flour exploded, it just launched into the whole living area. I mean, the place smelled like flour for a couple of years because of
Mom came in. She was livid. She was not happy.
So then I jumped on him and did the old carpet burns to the face, which was brutal, and I shouldn't have done that because it actually looked terrible for about a week, and I got in the most trouble just because of the way he looked. His face looked like he got in a fight with a carpet and lost.
Next time we have him on, I've got to get him to tell his version of it because I'm sure it'll be different.
Yeah, that was it. And I mean, I didn't. I'm not defending. We should not have done that. You all men shall know you by your love for one another, and we defied that in every way possible. Because then
that was probably the last fight you ever had, though, right?
Oh, that was it. And then I didn't realize at this point, we fought every day for years, but, we couldn't really hurt each other because we were little kids. But when I realized that we destroyed the kitchen, I threw his pizza out in the yard after he left. I ate my toast, and then I thought, yeah, we might ought to make an adjustment in how we handle conflict.
But you usually remember the last one. It was like the last spanking I ever gave my girls was on Christmas Day of all days. Because they were, fighting over what they didn't get or got. I can't remember the setting, but they remember it. But it was the last one they ever got, and they still remember it. So I guess it's the same thing. Yeah. So yesterday, Lisa and I celebrated 41 years of marital bliss, and it was really funny because I'm 60. Lisa will be 60 in January, and we worked out and rode bikes. I thought, who would have ever thought at 41 years that we would be in this place in life? Because she's working on her. She calls them mamaw arms. She wants to try to work her upper body a little bit. So I was taking her through some of the paces that I've been doing since I've lost this weight. And so we worked out on our 41st anniversary. So Zach, there's always hope.
Always hope. I can honestly say I've never seen an offer like this, maybe from any wireless company ever. At least I haven't seen it. Listen to this. Unlimited talk, unlimited text, unlimited data, plus a 30 gig hotspot. That's their highest plan that they offer for just $29.95 a month. That price, it's locked in for the rest of your life. This is Pure Talk's top tier plan. It's normally $65 a month, but now through December 7th, it's just $29.95 a month. That's over 50% saving every month for the rest of your life. Yes, that's on their crazy fast 5G network, but heads up, this deal will not be around long. Make the switch today. Tell your friends about it. Tell them that you're saving a ton of money with Pure Talk. I made the switch. You may be thinking, man, it's just so much work to switch. No, you can switch in as little as 10 minutes. Also, you know what? These guys have a heart for our veteran community. They love American freedom, just like we do. So go to puretalk.com/unashamed to grab their best unlimited plan for just $29.95 a month for life. So make that switch today in as little as 10 minutes. You can keep your phone and keep your number and just start saving with unlimited for life for $29.95 a month. Again, that's puretalk.com/unashamed to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. Taxes and fees not included. Some restrictions apply. See puretalk.com for details. Offer ends on December 7th, 2025.
Yeah, well, you reach a certain point where it's just, if you want to maintain
your lifestyle,
some sort of physical ability. Because my last 4 days have been a blur. We've had little man, which means I'm getting up at 6 o'clock, despite still going to bed because I'm studying after he goes to bed.
Yep.
And I had about a lot of speaking engagements in between. They were all local, but it was just great. I mean, I think the most fantastic thing I did was 3 or 4 days ago, I spoke at an FCA meeting before school at a junior high. I wish I had taken a picture because when I left, I thought, why didn't I just turn around and do a selfie so I could have shared that with you? I would say there was 250 to 300 junior high age at 7 o'clock in the morning. In our hometown. I didn't even know that many people went to that school, or we had that many. But I think it was half the school. So,
yeah.
But I thought, now I realized they can't drive, so they were dropped off. But still,
they have to choose to come. Yeah,
and they still had to choose to listen because they usually say, "Look, here's what the guy who introduced me said." He's like, usually the speaker speaks 10 minutes. I mean, this is junior high, and it is 7 o'clock in the morning. But I've heard your podcast, so we're going to give you the full allotment of our time for this gathering before school, which was 22 minutes. So I took 21 and a half minutes. But I was shocked at how well they listened. You know, I mean, they were typical junior high. They didn't laugh at my jokes, which I knew they weren't, because I taught junior high at our local church for 12 years. So, yeah, it was fantastic.
That's pretty awesome, Jase. Well, y'all ready to get into John?
Let's get into John.
I
am. We're in John 19. For those of you that have been following along, it's we kind of taken our time through the book of John because we're trying to get this higher view. I guess is the way of looking at it, and because we're in the narrative of Jesus' crucifixion, and so just rather than just read it, we've kind of been doing Jase's rabbit holes as we go along this process to be able to really see the significance of this, because this is the heart of the story of Jesus and what he did for us.
I would argue that it's John's rabbit holes of connecting the dots to Jewish history, and we're just, for the first time, kind of approaching the book that way. I mean, some of my study time was trying to kind of figure out, because we're right here at Jesus fixing to die. And, he predicted that he would die, be buried, and be raised in 3 days. Well, if you go look up these scholarly views of all that, you will find so much disagreement over why he said 3 days, when if you look at all the accounts, doesn't seem like 3 days. I mean, because you got Friday he dies, Sunday he's risen. So technically, we're thinking about our 3 24-hour time periods.
Right.
And if you try to make all that fit, you're going to be very frustrated.
Yeah.
So now I think I've, got a few things figured out on that, which at some point we can get into. But to my point, I think what you have in mind is what Jesus is fulfilling during these 3 days from the Old Testament and the Jewish history. Because there's a reason he's given you the timeline as we go along. Because when we get to John 20, the first verse says, on the first day of the week, early on the first day of the week.
Yeah.
So you know that he's given some reference for a reason there.
Right.
I mean, what's the implications? Which in my mind, I'm like, ooh, we have a new creation being launched here. Death has now been dealt with.
Well, and even the events that we're going to read about today, everything was geared towards the Sabbath, and that was why they broke their legs, the 2 guys with him, and they didn't break his because he was already dead. I mean, there was a lot of implications and prophecies that were fulfilled in the way it went down. So there was the timing of it was important.
Well, let me just give you that, since I guess I brought this up and then you echoed that. But yeah, he seems to be purposefully mentioning this is Passover week. And in my attempt to look at all these, with the 3 days, being buried in 3 days, what I found is a fulfillment from, I wrote this down somewhere, Leviticus 23. And I really believe these 3 festivals that seem to intertwine at Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection that are mentioned in Leviticus 23 is quite interesting. I mean, y'all probably know where I'm going with this, or maybe no.
Yeah, and well, I know where you're going, and there's a couple of more that because I wrote one down. Maybe I didn't write it down. I think Exodus 34 was another one where there was some significance to some of the Old Testament timing that timed into exactly what he was doing. I can't.
So the Jewish tradition, they would have the Passover celebration, and when Jesus died, this was like, not only was it just a Sabbath, but it was like the annual Sabbath festival. And then after that, so the day after the Sabbath, you had the Passover and the unleavened bread. I'm not sure what that was called, the feast of the unleavened bread. First of the unleavened bread. The feast of the unleavened bread. And then you had the waving of the first fruits. And so you see this in Leviticus 23, and you're like, well, how interesting is this going to be? It's really going to be quite interesting, because when you just read it, in Leviticus 23, verse 3, it says, there are 6 days when you may work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of rest, a day of sacred assembly. You are not to do any work, whether you live. It is a Sabbath to the Lord. So before I continue reading, I'll just echo what I said about this. This goes back to when God created the earth. So you remember he made man on the 6th day? And that's why it's significant where when Pilate said, here's the man, well, this is the 6th day of the week when this is happening. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think he's not doing this on purpose? So
No,
when you read Genesis 2, after he makes man, it says, verse 1, thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. So he set it apart because on it, he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. So there's that. Because then you have the Sabbath, and then 23 of Leviticus in verse 4 gets to the unleavened bread. These are the Lord's appointed feasts, the sacred assemblies you are to proclaim at their appointed times. The Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. So that's kind of the way they did their days. So like they would, from sunset to sun up. So technically, like on the Sabbath, they would start at sunset Friday and to sun up Saturday, right?
Yeah.
So then it says, verse 5, the Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the month. On the 15th day of the month, the Lord's feast of unleavened bread begins. Well, just think about all the times Jesus used this as an analogy.
Yeah, bread of life.
John chapter 6. Well, it makes perfect sense when you think about when he said, I am the bread of life.
Yeah.
And so then that's for 7 days you must eat bread made without yeast, and which goes back to the Passover because they had to leave in such a hurry. It's like you don't have time to put leaven in the bread, and then it kind of represents sin, just a little sin in the camp, and it spreads, and this kind of thinking.
One of the things I always say is that the creator of the cosmos chose to come to earth. He could have come any way he wanted to, but he chose to come through the womb of a young woman named Mary. And from her perspective, it was an unplanned pregnancy because she certainly wasn't planning on having a baby. Today, countless mothers face that same moment of decision when they see their baby on an ultrasound. They're scared, they're unsure, and their moment to say yes could pass, but you can make a difference right now to help them say yes. Because of the generosity of listeners like you, Preborn Network clinics can provide immediate support, maternity clothes, diapers, counseling, so much more, helping thousands of mothers embrace life. Over 380,000 babies have been rescued through Preborn, yet there are still thousands more denied the chance to live every single day. This holiday season, don't let another life be lost. Be the hope for hurting mothers and at-risk babies. Just say yes to life today. There are babies in their mother's womb who need our help right now. As the year comes to a close, your tax-deductible donation can be the difference between life and death. Would you consider a leadership gift to save babies in a big way? Your gift of $5, $10, or $15,000 could be used to save countless babies for years to come. To donate, dial pound 250, say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Or you can donate securely at preborn.com/unashamed. That's preborn.com/unashamed.
So verse 7, on the first day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. For 7 days, present an offering made to the Lord by fire, and on the seventh day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. Well, then in Leviticus 23, it goes to the first fruits. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I'm going to give you, and you reap its harvest, bring to the priest a sheaf of the first grain you harvest. He is to wave the sheaf before the Lord, so it will be accepted on your behalf. The priest is to wave it on the day after the Sabbath." So you see those 3 days? I just gave them to you. That's more the point in what Jesus is fulfilling. He becomes the rest. Just think about the verse, "Come to me, all you who are weak and heavy laden. Weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." You think about the Hebrews chapter 3 and Hebrews chapter 4. This rest that Jesus provided, and he calls it today, which is interesting because it's like every day you rest in Christ because of the righteousness he provided through his death on the cross and the sacrifice. So that's basically it. And then, so you say, well, what's the significance of the first fruits on the third day? Well, that's why Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 made this statement. Just think about how this makes more sense now. 1 Corinthians 15 says, 22, for as in Adam all die, so in Christ all will be made alive, but each in his own turn. Christ, the first fruits. Well, you see how that's being played here through the story of Israel, through the Exodus, the new Exodus. I mean, I think it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize that the whole Bible, what we're calling rabbit holes, is a story within history where ultimately God became a human from the nation of Israel, but Gentiles would be grafted in. Because the things he dealt with are prevalent to all humans: sin, death, the evil powers that are against humans. So that was kind of my take on the 3 days.
No, I think that's good, Jase. And what's amazing about it is that, and we've said this all through this study, is these people that were insisting that he be crucified were experts in the scripture and studying and knowing the Torah and knowing the book. And they should have seen all that. I mean, like, this is all happening. It's all fulfillment. It's exactly as it should have been. But it shows you when you're blinded, by a narrative that you're just so convinced that this guy's a charlatan that they missed the entire thing. I mean, what you just said, everyone in that day should have known and seen, because it was very clear as to how it was supposed to happen. But they didn't. I mean, they not only did they miss it, but they were the driving force in trying to eradicate him from the earth. I mean, that's how off they were.
Well, I bring this up because I think what we tend to do when we get to this part of God's story is we just focus, like here in America, on, well, he died for our sins. But I just showed you the 3 fulfillments, which is really the only way to make sense of, like, when he gave that illustration about Jonah, because he says, he tells the story of Jonah where he swallowed the fish for 3 days, but then he appeals it to what he's going to do. He prophesies it.
Right.
Because this is the verse that causes people problems, because he said, so the Son of Man will be dead 3 days and 3 nights. He actually uses that phrase. And so people, when they do the math, they're like, well, wait a minute. It was 3 days, but to say 3 days and 3 nights, it doesn't seem to fit if you read all the accounts.
Right.
And so I think the more important point of what they're saying is the multifacets of what he's accomplishing through his death, as in fulfillment to what happened in Exodus with the Passover and what all this means and how it relates to humanity. So because I just went through those 3 things. Well, not only did he die for our sins, but he also liberated us from the powers that hold us captive, which is, i.e., Pharaoh and the nation. And not only did he do that, but he's also becoming the first fruits from the dead, which is not the only place in 1 Corinthians 15. That also says that in Colossians 1.
Yeah.
And there's other places, which was it was the fulfillment of that, given the fruits, because from the earthly fruits, well, God was providing that also. Think of all the verses that says, does he not give rain and the crops come up? And there's so much in the Bible about fruits. And I mean, this is all coming from God also in a physical way, which to me, what makes this all exciting is when you get to something like Romans 8, and then you're seeing that not only are we liberated from our bondage decay because we have the Spirit. If the Spirit is living in you, the one that raised Jesus from the dead, which is Romans 8:11, it will give life to your mortal body. But then he goes to the whole creation, the earth itself, later on in Romans 8. Right. So it's just fantastic, which is where you get this idea of a new heaven and a new earth, a new creation. So that's why I was just wanting to point this out. Don't just get stuck on one thing about what Jesus is accomplishing. It's multifaceted, is the way I would put it.
Did you mention Isaiah 53?
I did not.
I think it's an interesting thing too, connecting it with the fruit, because that's obviously the Jesus is the suffering servant in Isaiah 53, and it's when Pilate is like, you realize I have the authority to kill you, and Jesus like, you have no authority except what's been given to you by my heavenly Father, which I think is a nod back to Isaiah 53, but which is I was going to say that earlier, but then you were mentioning the fruit and Jesus being the first fruit. Listen to the language in Isaiah 53, this prophecy. Who has believed what he has heard from us, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he grew up before us like a young plant and like a root out of dry ground. You get the picture even in the suffering servant of a plant that's emerging, and that fruit's going to come from whatever this suffering servant is, whoever he is. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hid their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. And then he just goes on, and you start to, as you read through this, you realize like this is like he's talking about the death of Jesus here and what's going to happen to Jesus. In that verse 10, going back to who really had the authority in the sacrifice that Jesus made, Jesus is giving his life up, and the point is, verse 10 says it was the will of the Lord to crush him. So wasn't when Pilate's like, you realize I have the authority to crush you? Jesus is saying, actually, it was the will of the Lord to crush him, and he has put him to grief when his soul makes an offering for guilt. He shall see his offspring and shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. And so Jesus is that suffering servant. In Isaiah 53, he is now like in the act of actually being the suffering servant. And the imagery there in Isaiah 53 starts with the imagery of a plant that grows and sprouts and produces fruit. And it's the first of its kind. Obviously, no one had ever done it. It's the new Adam. It's the new Exodus. It's all of it in Jesus.
Well, and it's a good point, because ultimately then that passes on to us as fruit bearers when we're renewed, even on earth. I mean, before the resurrection, which is a crucial thing for us as well. So you're right. That imagery is all over the place. And you look back at those Old Testament verses where he's called the root, the branch, all those different things as well. So that's
and then we abide in him. Well, I was curious, Al, what were you had mentioned Exodus 34. So what was your connection?
Well, actually, I went back and looked at that. I was doing some. It is in this text. I was looking into the myrrh. The thing that was mixed with his wine. They tried to give him to drink, and that took me back to this altar of incense. So it was a different point than I thought it was, but it is amazing how that is all over the place too. The deeper I went into a Jase rabbit hole on that, because I was looking at the birth of Jesus, like the gifts, that were brought by the Magi, and this myrrh was all over the place. And I still haven't quite gotten to what it means, because I'm still working on the background of that particular thing, but it was also present at his death. And you see it first brought up in Exodus. It was part of the incense that went on. So I haven't come to my conclusion yet, but I will. But it was interesting that so many of these like little bitty details that John brings in, as Jay said, they're crucial, because these were tipping points to what should have been recognized but wasn't. And they didn't really recognize it, I don't think, till later.
So the doctors at Brickhouse Nutrition, which make this wonderful product here that I take called Field of Greens, they get excited about sales too. And they just announced their Black Friday sale for 30% off on everything. It's the biggest sale of the year. The most impressive health and nutrition product in the industry right here is now 30% off. Like 30% off creatine, which is creatine designed for women to help you look leaner and shape and tone without extra dieting or exercise. You could even get 30% off Field of Greens, the only superfruit and vegetable drink shown in a university study to actually slow aging. And only Field of Greens promises better health results that your doctor will notice. I take this every morning along with my creatine. And I'm telling you right now, I feel a steadier energy throughout the day. None of those afternoon crashes. I sleep better gut health, which is something that I'm very invested in, is taking care of my gut. Every Brickhouse product from Better Sleep to Superior Collagen is 30% off. But hurry, because these Black Friday deals will go fast. Visit BrickhouseSale.com and save 30%. That's BrickhouseSale.com, BrickhouseSale.com.
Exodus 23 echoes what I read in Leviticus. Is it 23 also? Yeah. Yeah, Exodus 23.
So it's there as well.
If you go there, he has the Sabbath laws in verse 10. For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops, which same idea. But during the seventh year, let the land lie unplowed and unused. Then the poor among you, your people may get food from it. And then look, the next paragraph, the 3 annual festivals, verse 14, the three times a year you are to celebrate a festival to me. Celebrate the feast of the unleavened bread for 7 days. Eat bread made without yeast as I commanded you. So, I mean, you get the idea, the same concept. But what kind of hit me is I went back and read John 6. And especially since he said, here's the man, if you kind of go back to where we've been, because I keep getting asked questions from people about this who are they have a different view of this narrative for whatever reason. And, but I keep going back to what we've already studied, and what I noticed in John 6, I mean, this is quite fascinating because it echoes John 3. When he says, and it's kind of an idea, which is another facet of what Jesus is accomplishing, which is bringing heaven and earth back together. And maybe we didn't make this point as good as we should have, but if you go back to chapter 6 and verse 31, of course, he's speaking about what is the work. This is in response to a question in verse 28. They asked him, what must we do to do the work God requires? And Jesus said, well, the work of God is to believe in the one he sent. Yeah. I'm sure that was a mic drop moment. Like, what? But when he gets to 31, he explains that, which is echoing my point here about why he chose the Passover, and then fulfills also the unleavened bread festival and also the first fruits. He says in 31, our forefathers ate the manna in the desert, as it is written. He gave them bread, and here's the key phrase to understand all this, from heaven. This is coming from heaven. You're trapped on earth. To get back to my Romans 8 passage, the earth is in a bondage of decay, and so are the people. That's why it says in Romans, as in, when Adam sinned, he, in a way, brought death to all men. We're trapped in this decay. So watch what he says. So he's from heaven, and then it says, verse 32, I tell you the truth, it is not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. So it's from heaven coming to the earth to fulfill this problem. Sir, they said, from now on, give us this bread. And he's like, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will never go hungry. He who believes in me will never be thirsty. But as I told you, you have seen me and still don't believe. All that the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, I will never drive away. For I have, and here's this phrase again, come down from heaven, which he says it over and over. Verse 41, I am the bread that come down from heaven. They're like, how can you say, verse 42, that you came down from heaven? And so back to what I'm reading in John 6, verse 39, it says, and this is the will of him who sent me, that I shall lose none of them that he's given me, but raise them up at the last day. For my Father's will is that everyone who looks to the Son and believes in him shall have eternal life. Well, that's the liberation from the bondage of decay. And so just to piggyback that to John 3, so you remember the conversation he had with Nicodemus? Here's the Jewish leader. He sees the signs and he's like, I mean, the only way you could do that is if you were from God. And then Jesus has that famous line, you can't see the kingdom of God unless you're born again. And he's like, well, how can I be born again? And he said, I tell you the truth, unless he's born of water and spirit. Then he makes this statement that's very controversial in the religious world because people have different takes on it. But it's like flesh gives birth to flesh, but the spirit gives birth to spirit. Well, then he clarifies that with this same idea in John 6 when he gets down to in John 3 where he says, verse 12, I have spoken to you of earthly things, and you do not believe. How then will you believe if I speak of heavenly things? It's the same narrative. So the flesh gives birth to flesh. Your man was made from the dust. You're claiming that you're right with God because you're from the nation of Israel, God's chosen people, but you have an earthly existence. I'm speaking to you of heavenly things. So then verse 13 says, no one has ever gone into heaven except the one who came from heaven, the Son of Man. Why is he saying this? So I think you can only figure it out when you read that verse that we read a couple podcasts ago about 1 Corinthians 15. Here is the point. The point he's making is 1 Corinthians 15:47, after reading John 3 and John 6. The first man was of the dust of the earth. The second man came from heaven. It's the same identical narrative in John 3 and John 6 about you can't fix your problems from an earthly viewpoint. That's why I came from heaven to fix this. It's not about eating this bread. In John 6, he said, you're not even coming for the signs. You're coming because you like that bread and fish.
Yeah.
But he's like, because you got your fill.
Well, exactly. But you refuse to come to me. So back to 1 Corinthians 15, verse 48. As was the earthly man, so are those who are of the earth. Well, what's going to happen? You're going to die. The context of 1 Corinthians 15 is the resurrection.
Yeah.
And as is the man from heaven, so also are those who are of heaven. And just as we have borne the likeness of the earthly man, and we did that take on that, so shall we wear the likeness of the man from heaven. I mean, it's over and over, but if you don't apply that heaven and earth contrast, then we get off on all these sorts of doctrines on what flesh giving birth to flesh actually means. And, we're debating on what we need to do to respond to Jesus in this text. That was not his point. His point was, I came from heaven, and I'm here on earth. You need to listen to me. I'm sent from God. I got this. I'm going to make all this make sense and ultimately destroy sin, death, and the powers that contribute to those two things.
No, that's really good, Jase. We're going to take a break, and we come back on the other side of the break. One of our partners for our podcast is this story of Jesus. Their whole mission is to share that with kids around the world. So we're gonna have a conversation about that when we come back from the break. So, Jase, tell our audience what happens when your little dogs line up and it's time to eat.
I witnessed it this morning. I got out the bag of rough greens. Little Beatty started shaking, and they were excited.
It's excitement, right?
Yeah.
And my dogs do the same thing. And one of the things I've noticed about in my dogs is that their coats have been shinier. They seem to be healthier, seem to be much better reactive since we started the rough greens. And we've all seen it, right? The tough moments when your pet is sick, you go to the vet, The bills are starting to stack up. You can't figure out what's going on. You got to come back and forth. It's always something. It could be itchy skin, stiff joints, upset stomachs, ear infections, all kind of things that affect your pets. Most of these issues start in the same place, a worn down immune system from years of processed food. And that's why our good friend Dr. Dennis Black set out to fix this problem when he created Rough Greens. It's packed with real live nutrients that help your dog feel better from the inside out. And it's no wonder that they call it America's #1 dog supplement. Thousands of pet owners are finally breaking the vet visit cycle and seeing the difference for themselves. You can be one of those people as well. Right now, you can try it for yourself with a free Jumpstart trial bag. You just cover the shipping, because the best doctor visit is the one you never make. Go to roughgreens.com. Use the promo code Unashamed to break the cycle today. That's RUFFgreens.com. Promo code Unashamed. So welcome back to Unashamed. We have one of our sponsoring partners, which we have amazing sponsors. Would you agree, Zach? I mean, we have some folks that I think since kind of we went out on our own, we're able to really partner with people that kind of have the same heart we do. Yeah. In terms of the gospel. And Paul Marty is one of those guys from Tomorrow Clubs. Welcome, Paul, back to the podcast.
Oh, great to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
If you're watching, by the way, I had to put a coat on, Paul. You didn't, but I feel bad because you're from Minnesota, and I said, it's so cold here. And he was like, well, how cold is it? I said, about 25 or 30. He said, it gets 30 below where he's from. So he didn't have a lot of compassion for me.
No,
Zach. It's
I was like, hold my popsicle and watch this.
Exactly.
If you
Paul is speechless because he doesn't want to state the obvious that Zach now looks like he needs a hug. Yeah. He just
he's got his parka.
Yeah,
parka.
I would never do that even in public because people would say,
poor Zach.
Yeah. Jase is sitting there in front of a nice roaring fire behind him. If you're watching, you see that. So Paul, tell us a little bit about what you guys are into with Tomorrow Clubs. You guys have been sponsors for a while on the podcast. We love what you're doing. Obviously, we have a heart and a love for Africa. I've been there several times to different countries. But you guys are all over the world. But tell us a little bit about kind of what's going on right now with Tomorrow Club.
Where to start with that? I guess maybe I'll start with our. We have a 2030 vision, which is something new. We are hoping to reach 100,000 kids and teens, having them be a regular part of Tomorrow Club meetings every week by the year 2030. So that's 100,000 for you guys.
Wow,
100,000 kids. So
I love it.
Yeah. So that's our new vision. We're excited about that. And most of the growth we feel is going to happen in the continent of Africa because it's so ripe for growth. It's just amazing that there's so many things about that make it a tremendous opportunity. In fact, the Barna Research Foundation, Barna Research predicted that by the year 2050, a third of the children in the world are going to be in Africa. So, and just in global Christianity in general, it's so much of that has moved to the south, and by the south I don't mean Louisiana. I mean the southern hemisphere. In fact, about 66 out of 100 Christians are now in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So.
Wow.
Yeah, so we think that's where Christianity is headed, and we want to reach the young people there with the gospel.
Yeah, one of the things that really drew us to you guys is that, and we talked about this on the podcast a lot too, is it's not, we talk a lot about salvation and what we're saved from, but so often we don't emphasize enough who we're saved to. And we're actually saved to a life in Christ, and to really experience that, it's kind of a longer term play. It's like we're looking what does real discipleship look like And what it really looks like is a long obedience in the same direction, as I think Eugene Peterson said that, or Nietzsche or somebody. But it's true. It's a long obedience in the same direction. And that's what we love about you guys, because you're not just trying to like get people to an altar call. You're actually walking with these people for years. And some of my favorite stories that I've heard out of the Tamar clubs is those ones where you have somebody comes in from off the streets, and they come in maybe for a soccer game. They end up developing a relationship with the leaders in that Tamar club, and then those kids end up finding a relationship with Christ, and then they end up leading a Tamar club. So that's pretty common for you guys, correct? I mean, you guys are kind of seeing that turnover quite a bit.
Oh yeah, that's one of the awesome things about it. I think there's so many of our current leaders started out as Tomorrow Club members, and grew in over the years in their relationship with Christ, and are now leading others, other young people to God, or they're involved in discipling others.
Have you experienced persecution or some of the places you've been in Africa? Because Jase, we were talking about, was it Nigeria?
Yeah.
Where there was.
I was wondering that too, because I think now when you hear the word Africa, because there's this onslaught going against Christians now. So I was just wondering, your take on that, or how are y'all being mindful of that?
Yeah, in the places in Africa that we work in Zimbabwe and South Africa. Both of those they're Christian nations, and I know like countries like Nigeria, even though there's so much growth in Christianity, there's also so much persecution. But I think what we face in the places that we work is more just basically just a lack of discipleship. I think they're Christian nations, but they're really just not reaching the kids. There's a church in most of the places that we work in, and we work in really remote communities. I mean, for some reason, God's called us to work in places where other people aren't serving. So what we basically are facing is just that lack of discipleship. Yeah. And in these communities too, I mean, there's all kinds of problems. I think of in Zimbabwe, a lot of the communities that we work in, and these are rural communities where life is really tough. But one of their biggest issues is teen pregnancies and early marriage. And it's just amazing, reaching the kids with the gospel early and helping them learn to follow Jesus has made a tremendous difference in the communities. In fact, there was a pastor I talked with in one of our last trips who said, I love this because it just sums it up. He says, as a church, sometimes you neglect children. You don't give them much time, but the vision you've brought has changed our mindset. We're concentrating more on children, and we realize it's going to change our community. So, and I think that's just typical of what we see in the communities that we're working, that, the churches just aren't mindful of how powerful learning to follow Jesus at an early age is, and how much it can really change the course of their community.
Well, and it kind of goes along with, I know my forays into Africa, there's kind of a mindset there of survival of the fittest. And it's almost like children don't even get recognized much until you've kind of made it through those early years. And so I don't know if that's part of it, why that neglect is there that you're describing, that you wouldn't pour into that. I know that I noticed the same thing, that it tends to be adult oriented when, as we know from our experiences with camps, I mean, Zach and Jase and I have tremendous experience with our own camp experiences as young people, and how powerful that was. I mean, to get that seed planted in a young age, and even if you wander from the truth, as I did for a few years, the way back, because it was planted in you. Do you guys see that in Africa as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely true. I mean, it's really, just be seen and not heard. It's as far as their attitude towards children, very adult oriented, and we're trying to change that, and it's working.
It reminds me of our childhood. Our parents moved out in the middle of nowhere because they had come to Jesus, but then the sound of that was great, but in order to make a living, when I look back on being kids, they weren't around much because we were just scraping together. And so I think you've times that times 100, and you got some of the communities you're going where they're just so focused on survival that the kids get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We're super excited to be partners with Tomorrow Clubs. We love what you're doing for us to help us get the gospel out through the podcast, but also we're excited that Unashamed Nation gets to be a part of what you're doing. So 2030, that vision, we're a part of that.
Hey, Paul, why don't you give us a place where we can send people that want to be a part of this? I would encourage everybody to give. We'll also put the link in the show notes as well, so you guys can click on the link that Paul's going to give us. But this will be a place where we all can go and give to the ministry here. And, yeah, we want to see this happen. We want to see 100,000 children reach for Christ by 2030 in the continent. A lot of this is going to be in the continent of Africa, but all over the world. So I want you to partner with us. Paul, where can we send people to?
Yeah, you can send people to tomorrowclubs.org/unashamed. So that's tomorrowclubs.org/unashamed.
And we love the fact that you guys are very efficient in what you do. I like to say you throw nickels around like manhole covers. You're not wasting a lot of money. You guys are very lean. The money that people give is going straight to these kids, and it doesn't take a lot either. So we really pray that you'll be successful, mainly because we want to see these kids come to know Jesus. So thank you for being a part of the Unashamed family, and we're just thankful to have you on this afternoon.
Oh, well, I'm so thankful to be here. Thank you guys for what you do. You're awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube. And be sure to click the little bell and choose all notifications to watch every episode.